Hey guys, today we're going to talk about absolute value equations and we're going to go ahead and solve them. So quick reminder, absolute value is a distance a number is from 0. Remember, our distance is always positive, so your absolute values will always be positive. We're going to think about a basic example. So if I have the absolute value of x equaling 3, that means my distance from 0 is 3. Well, that means I could have positive 3 or negative 3. Let me draw a number line really quick. So here's 0. Obviously, positive 3 is 3 units from 0, but remember, since distance is always positive, technically negative 3 is a distance of 3 units away. So both 3 and negative 3 are answers to this equation. Similarly, absolute value of x equaling 8 gives us two answers. We have both a positive 8 and a negative 8 as our answers. Okay, so absolute value, the actual distance itself will always be positive, but you can have a negative solution because the distance from negative 8 to 0 is still a positive distance. Knowing that, we're going to take a little more complicated examples and equations and solve those. So we have the absolute value of x plus 2 equals 6. Well, according to our previous rule, we know that we could have x plus 2 equaling positive 6 or x plus 2 equaling negative 6 because we have both the positive and the negative distance from, the positive and the negative numbers from 0. So in order to solve these equations, they're just simple one-step equations. So we have to subtract 2 on both of them. That gives us x equals 4 here, x equals negative 8 for the second equation. Both of these, if you plug them back in, will give us an absolute value of 6. So let's try it. 4 plus 2 is 6. What's the absolute value of 6? 6. Plug negative 8 in here. Negative 8 plus 2 is negative 6. What is the absolute value of negative 6? Well, that'd be positive 6. So both work. Okay, solve this equation. Absolute value of x plus 3 equals 16. Whenever you see an absolute value equation, you know you're going to have two answers. So our first step or our goal is to write those two equations right off the bat. We have x plus 3 equaling positive 16 and x plus 3 equaling negative 16. When you write these equations, it's imperative. You have to get rid of those absolute value signs or markings. So we have x plus 3 equals 16, x plus 3 equals negative 16. Subtract 3 again. We have x equals 13, or we have x equals negative 19. Again, you could plug both of those back in, and you're going to get 16 as an answer. I want you guys to solve this one. Here we have 5 times the absolute value of x equaling 20. In order to solve this, in order to write our two equations, we must get that absolute value by itself. So think about it as if it didn't have absolute values there. To solve this, we would have to divide by 5, so that's our first step. That leaves us with absolute value of x equals 4. This is one of those really basic examples from the beginning, so we have x equals positive 4 and x equals negative 4 as our answer. Okay, similar one. This time, the inside of our absolute value has a couple steps. So 4 times the absolute value of y minus 2 equals 40. Get those absolute value all by themselves. So you have to divide by 4. A very common misconception is that we distribute this through the absolute value. You cannot do that. Don't do it. You have to divide by 4. So divide by 4, you get absolute value of y minus 2 equals 10. Now you can write your two equations. Y minus 2 equals 10, or y minus 2 equals negative 10. Solve those, you get y equals 12, or y equals negative 8. Final one. Similar to our last two examples, this time instead of multiplication out in front of our absolute value, we have subtraction. You could have addition out here as well. Our goal is still to get this absolute value by itself. The first thing you have to do is add 2. Again, another misconception, you cannot combine these. Okay, this has absolute value. That means that has to stay by itself. You get rid of that minus 2, put it on the other side. In order to do that, we have to add 2 to both sides. So we have the absolute value of x minus 6 equals 0. Now, here's your one time that you won't have two answers. We generally, at this moment in time, write our two equations, one with a positive answer, one with a negative. You cannot have positive 0 and negative 0. So your only equation would be x minus 6 equals 0. So you have one solution of x equals 6.